car trying to make my way around the city. And I didn't go very many places. I was a little careful. Well, by the time I taught school for 5 years, by the end of those 5 years, I was enjoying the city and I knew my way around. I kind of knew how things worked, and I learned to enjoy the city and the opportunities that it gave me. Moved down into an apartment, and I loved those opportunities of living in an apartment. I still live in an apartment, and I still love the opportunities that it gives. So I moved out as a single person, met my wife out there, and we have 3 children today. This is a picture of our staff who we've been blessed to come alongside and help us with a whole bunch of different things. And I'm going to tell you more about those things. Board members, everyone should have someone looking over their shoulder to say, are you sure you know what you're doing? I highly recommend every person have somebody who can say, are you sure, as you go through life. Well, when Rosanna and I got married, we told God, we said, God, we want to be used by you. And I don't know, I think God may have taken that more seriously than we did. Because it's been really interesting, the many opportunities that God has given us. So this is Logan Park Apartments, the apartment complex that we live in. This red line here goes around the apartment complex that we live. This is, right over here is the lamppost where we have a lot of our classes, activities, things like that. But this apartment complex, inside this red line, this arrow here is the building that I live in. So if you can imagine, inside that red line is 33 acres. The apartment complex I live in is about 33 acres. So imagine if the 33-acre field that's next to you, they came in, leveled it out, and started building. And eventually you ended up with over 2,000 people living on those 33 acres. Would that change your life? Maybe a little. It's very interesting. I talked with one of our neighbors who lives just outside the complex, and he said he remembers when it was all wheat fields. Well, imagine they came in and just ripped it all out, turned it into low-income housing and apartments. And I get to live there today. Now, when I go different places, I often think about how does it look or what's it like where I am? So I'm in the 43756 zip code right now, I think. So in that zip code here, there are about 35 people in every square mile. That's what the U.S. Census says. 35 people per square mile. Do you want to guess what it looks like out where I live? Here you go. The 95842 zip code has 8,610 people per square mile. It gives you a little bit of an idea of the difference. Now, I'm not saying that me living there makes me a better person. I think there's opportunities in the city. I think there's things that we can do that are easier to do. One of the things is it is easier for me to learn to know my neighbors. I learn to know my neighbors right on the sidewalk that goes across by my house. I'm walking to work. They're getting ready to go to work. I get to talk with them. That's how I learn to know my neighbors. How do you learn to know your neighbors? It's a little more complicated. I remember, I grew up in this. You know, you have to drive out the lane, drive down the road, drive in your neighbor's lane. look around for the dog. How do I open the gate? Knock on the door. And then you can finally learn to know your neighbor. That takes work. And it takes, effort in your heart. You got to, want to do this. I do it effortlessly because they come to me. I get to see them right here. And it gives me so many opportunities just to say hi. How's your day going? And I love that. That is one of the things that I love about living in the city, is the fact that I get to see people right there, and it's easy to learn to know them. Currently, the U.S. has a population of 36.8 million apartment residents, living in 21.3 million apartment homes. Approximately 266,000 new units need to be built each year to meet the demand for more. Is it asking too much that every apartment complex in the United States have at least one good Christian in it? Streetlight Christian Ministries is an Anabaptist urban ministry promoting life skills and biblical discipleship. We do that in a number of different ways. We do that through Kids Club, life skills classes, fruit giveaway, homework club, English or ESL classes, adult Bible study, children's Bible classes. We do a lot of different activities. But for us, we didn't start out saying this is where we're going to be. We started out by saying, God, we want you to use us. Now, what could we do to position ourselves for God to use us? We moved into an apartment, and we said, what could we do in Logan Park Apartments? This is the lamppost where we have a lot of our classes today. We didn't start out in this space either. We have been blessed to have groups. We had a number of youth from the German Baptist community about an hour and a half from us who just put a lot of work into helping us get things ready to have classes there and things like that. But where we started wasn't there. We started by going over, so I live downstairs here. I have a neighbor who lives above me. I have a neighbor who lives just over here. I have a neighbor who lives up here. Then I can go out to my sidewalk out here, and I have a neighbor who lives over here. Then there's people above them, and then I have neighbors over here. Oh, and then there's some over here too. And it's just a lot of people. We started by going out of our house, walking over to our neighbor's house, knocking on the door, and saying, we'd like to invite you to come over for dinner. Single mom with 3 children. And they came over for dinner. And after dinner, I said, do you guys know how to play Monopoly? Oh, yeah. So we played Monopoly. And at the end of the evening, I said, so back then I was working for Choice Books. And so I said, I often leave early and I get home about the time you get back from school. Come over and we'll play games. And they did. And then I said, well, do you have friends who would enjoy playing games? And they invited their friends. And then their friends invited their friends. We think, come on, we're adults. We've got it, don't we? I mean, we know how to text message. We can send messages. We know how to, the children's network will beat our network just about every time. They know how to get the word around. So we started, I told them after they would just come over anytime, and we had so much fun with them. This was just a few months after we were married. We had so much fun with them in the afternoon, in the evening. And then after we knew a number of them, I said, okay, so you need to make sure that you come on Saturdays at 3 o'clock, because we're going to do something special. We started building things out of candy. And as you can imagine, this young man is now my chief salesman. Because when he leaves my house, when he walks down the sidewalk, the first person that sees him, what do they say? Where'd you get that? Just over here. I want one. We'll go knock on the door. And all of a sudden, we're learning to know more people. And more people. And then more people. How many people can you fit in a one-bedroom apartment? There's a limit. It gets pretty crowded. We realized before very long that this wasn't going to be sustainable. Like, you just aren't going to be able to pack everybody into your house all the time. And so there was a community building in the complex. I had met the pastor who was in charge of that building, and I just called her and said, so this is what we're doing. What would it take to use this space? And she said, oh, I'm so glad you called. She said, we've always dreamed of the community helping the community. You live here. You come down tomorrow, and I'll give you keys. We don't use it on Saturdays. You can do anything you want. I went down the next day, signed my name 2 times. They put us straight onto their insurance, gave me keys, and said, have fun. You can do whatever you want on Saturdays. Talk about God opening some doors. I went home and I said, I don't know what I did, but we're going to do something. Well, when you decide to do things, there's so many things you can do, especially when it comes to doing things with children. You can make ice cream out on the tennis court. You can tell Bible stories. You can do inside projects. You can think about what a gingerbread house for Christmas might look like. So many things you can do with children. To this day, if you come and see me on a Saturday, unless I'm traveling, I will be surrounded by children in the afternoon, and I will be telling Bible stories. I love the opportunity to tell Bible stories. We use flannel graph. It seems to have worked well for us. It can't be a long story, but I love the opportunity to talk about what God sees and how God looks at things. So much fun to spend time with these children. Fruit is something that I never thought I would do. When we started doing Kids Club at the community building, it was about that time that Rosanna was pregnant with our oldest. And the children, that when they found out that we were expecting a baby, they were like, no, that's not good. I said, why? Well, they said, you won't have time for us then. I said, that's not fair, guys. Come on, seriously. So when we started doing Kids Club at another place, I told him, I said, we still want you to come to our house. So if you come to our house after school, if I have fruit around, I'll give you a piece of fruit. And they did. And I would go out to the local store and buy, a couple bags of grapes and some bananas, and we would give out fruit. Well, you can imagine that's something else. That word kind of gets around. And even today, Miss Rosanna has another name. Sometimes she's Miss Rosanna, other times she's the fruit lady. But I don't buy fruit anymore, just a little bit here and there. I buy cases of fruit, or we have people who donate fruit for us to use. We put up a doorbell for people to come and get fruit. And you know, I love the interaction, the casual interaction in the community. The other thing that I love is when I'm having trouble at Kids Club. When those of you who have worked with children know, if you've got little Johnny here and he's kind of having problems, and we're kind of getting into this thing. I'm trying to get him straightened out. You know that all his peers are going to be around here. Oh, this is fun to watch. What's happening here? And it gets a little messy, and sometimes it gets a little hot. But you know, the next day, if Johnny comes over and rings my doorbell, and I have a chance, and he's by himself, then I can sit down with him and say, so, how are we going to work on this? It was a little uncomfortable yesterday. What do you think I should do different that would make you feel better? Here's some things you might need to do because there are rules. And I get to talk. We get to work these things out here rather than trying to figure it out when you're surrounded with, 40 other children. Life skills classes. I want to point out here that I don't think of myself as somebody who just knows how to do everything. The things that I know how to do, many of them are because I was given a gift of growing up and being taught things. And many of you have that as well. Use those things. There's nothing wrong with saying I need to go to college because I need this degree to do something. I don't have a problem with that. But you don't have to be an amazing professor to do things. I don't have a college degree. I've worked in the public school. I've taught school in many different places. But I don't have a college degree. I just looked at things and said, what are things that I know how to do that I could maybe do? And then I tried it. Why not? So you can imagine, after we do Kids Club for a while, there was a group of girls that came, and they said, Miss Rosanna, you make the best snacks and the best food. Can you teach us how to make food? Guess what, ladies? I think I'm probably safe to say you all know how to cook. Pretty well, actually. It's a skill that you've been given. Why not? Why not use it? And when the neat thing about talking about food is you can talk about so many different things. This is all food made out of Play-Doh. So that we could discuss what is healthy and what isn't. So your job is to make what you think is a good balanced meal. After you're done, we get to talk about this. What do you think? Is this a balanced meal or not? Why would it be or why wouldn't it be? And we get to talk about those things. Well, when we started doing these classes, with a lot of single moms, a lot of African American children, things like that, in the more recent, starting back in about 2019, some of the Afghan refugees that came over moved into Sacramento. And then more of them moved in. And then more of them moved in. And then they flooded in when the United States was pulling out a lot of you probably remember when the United States was pulling out of Afghanistan. You saw pictures of people dropping from airplanes, things like that. because they so desperately wanted to get out of Afghanistan. And all of a sudden, many thousands of Afghans. Some people say there's up to about 30,000 Afghans in Sacramento today. They flooded into the area. And all of a sudden, when we did a cooking class, all of a sudden you run into some interesting things that you didn't think about. When you tell them to measure something, they have never, nor has their mom ever, measured anything. Why would you? You can't. You just throw some stuff together and it comes out. Interesting concept. Even in a culture like that, there are some people who are better cooks than others. They just are a little bit better at throwing the right amount in, I guess. But it's very fascinating, for the first time we get to talk with these girls and the boys about how much a cup is. And the fact that if you do it the same way every time, you'll get the same results. Cooking doesn't have to be guesswork. You can imagine after a cooking class, there's going to be some of the children that are going to come back and say, Miss Rosanna, that was so fun. What else do you know how to do? Well, what else do we know how to do? Ladies, what else are you known for? There's a reason that people come and knock on my door and say, Mr. Rosanna, can you sew these patches on my biker jacket? Why did they figure that Rosanna knows how to sew? Why not use what you have? Why not do a sewing class? Why not take that opportunity to talk with them and tell them stories and talk about what's right and what's wrong? Had so much fun doing shop class with some of the boys. I don't think of myself as, I don't know a lot about all the things and all the stuff that goes on in an engine, but I do know a little bit. So somebody had these junk lawnmowers and we brought them in and we said, okay, see how much you can take apart, but you can't use a hammer. It was so interesting. They're trying to figure out how to get this bolt loose. And they put this socket on it, and it's like, oh, we're really going places. We're just, And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. You're not actually doing anything. This socket is just spinning. Oh. What number is this socket? Well, it's 7. Okay. What number comes before 7? 6. Yeah. Okay, go get a 6. So they bring it back. Now I can't turn anything. I said, that's good. Now go get the socket. Let's put it, put the ratchet on there, and then we can loosen it. Oh, that's how it works. See, I don't know very many things, but I do know a little bit about a socket set. It's so interesting to talk to them, get a chance to show them some of these things for the first time. What about changing a tire? My neighbors couldn't believe when I would help them jump start their car. They're like, how do you know how to do that? I'm like, I don't know. I just grew up on a farm. Like, you just do it. And I've realized as I have looked at my friends and my neighbors, I realize what I've been given. Had several boys who came to Kids Club, and I did some tutoring with them. They were staying with their aunt because one day their mom took them to daycare like usual and just never came back. So they ended up in the foster system and eventually were placed with an aunt. How do you think that feels for them? When they lay down at night, what do they think about? How do you think that might affect who you are? And how do you think you might feel about anyone who you start trusting or who you think about trusting? Would that change who you are? Yes, it would. Art class. Building birdhouses. You know, if you are a 9-year-old and you have never held a hammer or a nail in your life, it's a challenge to figure out how to get it all like set up right so that you can pound this thing. It's just a lot of moving pieces. Like you've got this piece of wood that's moving around. Come on, you guys are laughing. Why? Look, it's something that you know how to do. You've been blessed with it. God gave it to you. Use it to help someone. Why not? As we learn to know more people, I was amazed at how many fourth graders I learned to know who didn't know how to read. You see, that's another gift that you've been given. I tell my neighbors, I said, our schools aren't perfect, but we do put a lot of effort into making sure you know how to read. There aren't very many who are going to come out of our schools saying, I can't read. That's a blessing, a gift you've been given. I didn't know that it was a gift. I thought it was normal. It's not normal. We started doing some tutoring with some of these children. About then was when the Afghans started moving in, and we started realizing that they need to learn how to speak English. So we started having some classes to help them learn how to speak English. Just getting ready for a class one day, and we're just getting ready to start. And one of the boys looks at me and says, "Teacher, who are you?" What do I say? I said, well, I'm not sure I was pretty sure he was from Afghanistan. I said, well, I'm not sure what you're looking for, but I said, I'm an American. He said, no. He said, my dad tells me there are Muslims and there are Christians and there are Jews. Who are you? I said, okay, I get it. I said, I'm a Christian. His eyes got big. He'd never met a Christian before. He said, you're a Christian? I said, yeah, I'm a Christian. He said, but my dad said when Christians, when they die, they go to the fire. You don't want to be a Christian. In fact, he said, you can become a Muslim. It's very easy. You just say these words and then you're a Muslim. You could say it right now. I said, I understand. But I said, I don't want to be a Muslim. I like being a Christian. You like being a Christian? I said, yeah, I do. By now, teacher isn't making any sense to this little 11-year-old. He's just like, he makes no sense. And so he said, how do I become a Christian? Well, I said, it's a little more complicated than becoming a Muslim. I said, you have to read the Bible and do what it says. You have to tell God you're sorry for the wrong things you did. And you have to believe that Jesus is God. He said, oh, no, that's not true. Jesus is a prophet. I said, that's why you can't be a Muslim and a Christian at the same time. You have to choose. Well, this young man, as you can guess, went home just puzzling over teacher. Teacher didn't make any sense. But it blesses my heart that I had the privilege of being the first Christian that this boy ever met. Isn't that amazing? God chose me to be the first Christian that this boy had ever met. We do a lot of helping with homework. The children can bring their homework after school if they need help with it. And we help them work through their homework. It's been very interesting. I've learned a lot about curriculum from different places and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I can get the right answer, but I don't know how to do it the way that you're supposed to do it. I can tell you what the answer is. Now, can you figure out how to build it the way your teacher taught it? Because I don't know how to do that, but I can get the answer. English as a second language. Opportunities abound for teaching English, both in this country and abroad. It's such a neat opportunity. If you're trying to get into another country, so often it can be difficult, some of the countries, to get in as a missionary. But if you go in as a teacher, you have opportunities. So when we started working with some of the children, one of the dads came to us. So a lot of these Afghan people came over when President Obama was in office. He created a special visa for people from Afghanistan to be able to come over, people who had helped the U.S. forces over there. Because he said they will possibly be targeted in the future. They should have opportunity to come here. And so the people who we work with are here legally. They have their paperwork. There hasn't been a big issue with that. But they came over, and a lot of the men, because they had worked with the U.S. military, they knew some English. They had learned a little bit. But the ladies knew none. And one of the men came to us and said, "You teach my children. Would you teach my wife?" Well, I'd never thought about that. Like, I've only worked with children. And so we had a girl who was there helping us, so I just asked her, I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "I'd like to give it a try." So I said, "Fine, let's do it." I went down to the local college, took pictures of all their English textbooks, and called publishers and said, "I'm getting ready to teach some adults English, and I have no idea what I'm doing." And one of the reps was a Seventh-day Adventist man, and he came over and was so kind to us and so helpful. Well, nobody knew when the first Afghan people moved in that there would be that many here today. We started out with 3 on our living room floor. Leaned a whiteboard up against the wall and said, "Okay, this is what we have." We were working on the space that we use today, but it needed a lot of renovations, and it took a lot longer than it was supposed to. Anybody know anything about county regulations around here? The first year it was 3. The second year it was 8. And it just went from there. As you can imagine, while we're trying to figure out how to work with them, they're trying to figure out how to work with us. Had a man come to me and he said, "So, you're a Christian?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "So I've always tried to figure out, do Christians believe in 3 gods or 1 God?" I said, "Well, we believe in 1 God." Well, he said, "Then what's this 3 thing? Don't you have different gods?" I said, "Well, we believe in God the Father and Jesus and then the Holy Spirit." And he said, "Okay, I've heard of Jesus. We would think of him as a prophet. The Holy Spirit, I never heard of the Holy Spirit. What's that?" How do you explain the Trinity, especially to someone who has limited English? It's such a fascinating thing. I thought that, like, I believed it because it was. I was taught it. It is hard. That is a hard concept, as I have pondered it different times. It's hard to explain. And I tried to explain to him that, it's kind of, in some ways, it's 3 different ways of seeing God. I don't know if I said the right thing or not. But it's a hard concept to know how to explain to them. As you can imagine, along the way, we have had many people who have come to us and said, "Teacher, my uncle is in danger in Afghanistan. Can you help get him out? My brother, the Taliban picked him up before. If they catch him again, they're going to kill him. Can you help get him out?" And I realized that, as a teacher, I'm kind of respected in the community. But I'm like, I'm really sorry. You think I'm somebody that I'm not. I can't just make this happen. But we have listened to many, many, many stories. Horrific things. Terrible things that happen. The Muslims just completed the month of Ramadan. That's when they believe that the Quran was given to the Prophet Muhammad during the month of Ramadan. So they spend the month of Ramadan fasting during the day. So when the sun is up, they can neither eat nor drink until the sun goes down. And they do that for about a month. And one of the ladies came to class, and she told one of our teachers, she said, "Teacher, I love fasting because I know that if I do this, God will forgive my sin." Do you in your religion have a way that God forgives your sin? What a great opportunity to say, yes, we do. His name is Jesus. He came and gave his blood because nothing that we do is enough. Neat opportunity to be able to talk about who God is. Most of you are native English speakers. Tell me, is there a difference between soft and fluffy? There is a difference, and all of you know it. But how do I explain it? Sometimes the best way to explain it is to go to the local pet store and pet some animals. And then you can talk about what feels soft and what feels fluffy and what feels furry and what the difference is, even though it's hard to explain. Our teachers spend a lot of time studying, a lot of time going to their students' homes. So we do a mixed model where the students come to class 4 days a week, but then our teachers will go to their house once a week for an hour to each one of them, just to sit down and visit with them. And some of them really want to do more English homework, and that's fine. Some of them just need a friend and need somebody to talk with, and others need help with the mail. Teacher, I got this in the mail. Today's a good day. I'm rich. It says I have $1 million. And I get the chance as an English teacher to bust that bubble and just say, I'm so sorry. I know it says you want $1 million, but it's not true. I can't explain sweepstakes to you because I don't even understand it all. But I'm sorry, you're not a millionaire. But it's amazing. I can sort through mail. How long does it take you to sort through mail? You can sort mail in about 30 seconds flat, even if you have a pretty big stack. You just know. They don't. So they look at this stuff and it's like, I don't know. And sometimes they'll bring it over to the lamppost and they're like, what do I do with this? And I'm like, okay, this you can throw away, this you can throw away. Now this one matters. You need to do something about this. And it's just so fascinating. Who knew? And it has helped me just, as I look in the Old Testament especially, but even the New Testament, God, in the Old Testament, you know how many times God talked about being kind to the people coming into the country of Israel, and the destitute, and the fatherless, and the widows. God cares about those people, and he has from way back. As we started doing more classes, some of the ladies said, well, what about my children while I'm coming to class? I said, just bring them. We'll do babysitting. Well, I learned that it takes a little, sometimes it's better to prepare a few things. My wife babysat for so many children, and then we said we need help, and we got somebody to help, and then we went through a lot with those children. For a while, Rosanna did it. Then there was a year that Rosanna and I did it together while the classes were happening, and it was very interesting. But, oh, these little children need to be seen. But you know, it was another one of those things when we first started working with these Afghan immigrants. Nobody knew. We were just trying to help, trying to do what we could there. Nobody expected that today we would have about 100 adult students coming to class. Not only do we have 100 who are in class, we had, when we opened registration, we had 350 who signed up for class. The demand is just incredible. And they keep coming. They're still finding ways of getting in with their visas. It's slowed down a lot with Trump and his immigration policies. But they're still coming, and they're also moving around even inside the United States. A lot of them like Sacramento because there's a big Afghan community. You can go to the Afghan stores and restaurants and all of that kind of thing because of that. Children's Bible class every Wednesday afternoon, getting another opportunity to tell Bible stories to these children. This is for ages 9 and up. So we get to talk about some slightly more adult concepts, things that they're thinking about and working through. Adult Bible study on Sunday afternoons. Not a lot of people, but the opportunity to sit down with a few of them and talk about who God is and pray with them. Opportunity to say, what's going on in your life? Let's pray about it. Next week when they come, we prayed about this last week. What is God doing? And that opportunity to just keep up with them and keep saying, when this happens, pray about it. Have you prayed about it this week? What's God doing? I had just talked about in Bible study, we had talked about fear and different things that happen that make us fearful. And at the end, when I was done, one of the ladies, as we split into groups to pray, one of the ladies looked at one of the teachers and said, Miss Elizabeth, do humans have a happy ending? What do you think? Do humans have a happy ending? The only thing I can say is they can. It's not hopeless. They can have a happy ending. Imagine going to someone's home, and when you get there, one of your students, when you get there, she's crying. It's like, well, what's going on? And she says, today I'm sad because my husband is on the phone working with his caseworker trying to figure out how to bring his second wife to America. What about the lady who comes and knocks on the door at the lamppost and comes inside and says, can you call the police? And I'm like, I can help you, but I'm going to need a little more information here. Well, it was a situation where her husband was beating her. So I called the police. She had marks, so they arrested him. You know, just hearing those stories and trying to figure out how do you help them, and knowing that statistically, and especially in her culture, she has nothing. The chances of her actually leaving her husband, whether she should or not, is not very high. You know they're going to get back together. You know this is going to happen again. It's going to be ongoing. And such just... oh, so many of those things that you try to figure out. How can we help? And pointing to God and saying, even when we can't figure it all out and when we can't answer all these questions, God cares and God sees you. It's so much fun. In this case, one of our teacher's moms came to visit. And so one of her students said, oh, we need to have everybody over for dinner. And this is very typical, where they just put a cloth on the floor and you sit around it, and this is how you eat. And a lot of them, I still have kind of a hard time. I prefer a fork, but a lot of them will eat with their hands. It's so much fun. But I realized as I have sat around these tables and eaten with them and talked, realized that these are students of ours, but they're way more than students. They're also friends. I meet them in the local Walmart when we're shopping. They're also my neighbors. My children play with their children. I love the opportunities that the living close by gives you. This man came to English class, and he knew a lot of English. And I told him, I said, you don't need to be in class. Well, he said, I come to class because I want to learn more about American culture. I said, that's fair. So he would come to class, and I got to visiting with him. I found out that this man was a speech writer for the president of Afghanistan. And it kind of inspired me. So the next class, I sat down and I sat him in a circle and we went around. And I said, so this was a little bit of a higher level class. I could communicate a little more with him. I said, so what did you do in Afghanistan? This one was a speech writer. This one was an engineer. This one worked with the special forces. This one had his own he was a contractor business. This man baked cakes. And I went around the whole circle and I realized I'm the dummy of the group. But they come to me. What an opportunity for this dumb little farm boy to sit down with a whole bunch of guys and talk about things while we're learning English. Oh, you can talk about so many different things. What a neat opportunity that God has given me. When you start talking with them and you start learning things that have happened in their lives, you start hearing of trauma, so much hurt. You talk about refugee camps, they know what they are. Some of them have lived in them. Things like that. every year we do a store for the students to be able to come and go shopping. And so they come, and it's to practice English. So the upper level classes, they are the storekeepers, and the lower level classes come and shop. And they have to talk in English about this store. Like, why do we talk about the dairy section? What would be in the dairy section anyway? What does dairy mean? What about the produce section? What would you, and some of the things, it's like, okay, yeah, we talk about the dairy section, but we don't talk about everything in sections. Why not? And helping them think about these things, but also helping them to pay. We give them play money, and they have to give exact change. Why is a quarter 25 cents? What's special about 25? Well, we get it because a quarter means there's 4 in a whole. And so 4 25s make 100. So it makes sense when you think about it the right way. But a quarter is kind of an interesting concept. Parties. They love parties. We've had so much fun with them in parties. Some of the guys found out that I grew up on a dairy farm. And they said, we want to see a dairy farm in the United States. I said, all right, I'll take you to one. So I had a friend who's in the German Baptist community who raises hay, and he set us up to go tour a dairy. And these guys, they're talking about it, they said, like in Afghanistan, they said, you were very careful where you bought your milk. They said everybody added water to the milk. But you just tried to choose the one that added the least. And it struck me. I went home and I told my wife, I said, I never thought about that. When I was growing up, we could have just put the water hose in the tank for a while. Who would have caught it? I never thought of that. And we got to go and take a tour of a robotic dairy. And I enjoyed it just as much as they did. But it was so interesting on the way home. They're talking about this, and they're talking in their language, and I can't understand them. And I'm like, guys, what's going on? What did you think about it? And one of the guys, he's like, oh, so much good grass. Children come play. No problem. Neighbors, no. Good. And one of the other guys said, yeah, nice. But it smells so bad. What do you say? So interesting to see the things that they notice in our culture. We are in the process, boy, this doesn't show up very well at all. Right now, we are in this space right here. We're using most of this space. We're in the process of getting permits and things like that to be able to expand into more space back there in the future. And as you all know, it's a process. But that's the dream, to someday be able to have a little more space than we do. We're renting. We're continuing to rent. But the dream is to be able to add some more classrooms, things like that. But you know, these people need to see a real Christian. When's the last time that you went fishing with your neighbor? This is a great urban fishing. They need to see a real Christian. Are you going to be that person? You don't have maybe quite as many neighbors that live close as I do, but you do have neighbors. Are you going to show them? I'm blessed that God, I remember growing up praying for the 1040 window, the place where most of the unreached people groups are. And I remember praying and saying, God, please open doors so that people can go there. And when my neighbors moved in and they were from Afghanistan, I told my wife, I said, this is God's answer. There's more countries that are open today. People can go. But God said, I'll do something even better. I'll bring them here. And all of a sudden, I get to do things with these people who lived in the 1040 window. For the first time, they now are trying to figure out if they want to be a Muslim or not. And I get the opportunity to talk with them. God bringing them to us. I don't have to go get a visa. I can just go and talk with my neighbors. As you can imagine, when it comes to kids club and things like that, when you're working with different cultures, they're going to remember the Bible stories differently. So every day, every Saturday, if the children come and can remember and can tell us the story from last week, they get a prize. So one of the boys came and he said the story last week. He said it was about this man who went up on a mountain and he was going to cook his son, but then God gave him a lamb instead. Anybody find a Bible story in there? The story of Isaac, Abraham and Isaac. He's not wrong. It's just an interesting way of thinking about it, isn't it? There are newsletters in the back. Please pick them up. There's a sign-up sheet if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter. There's prayer cards. If you would like to take pictures of children home and pray for them. It's, we've talked about different times, how do you pray for hundreds and hundreds of children that we know? We are looking for a single lady and a single man to help teach English this fall. So coming in August. So if you are interested or you know someone who you think might be interested, I would love to talk to you about it. Are there questions I can answer?
The English classes, are they fully funded by people behind you, or is it people coming to pay English classes? Is that what funding?
So in California at least, pretty much all the classes that will be offered to immigrants are free. And so all the local schools that offer classes offer them as free, and so we do as well. There would be opportunity to get government money for it. And I'm not completely closed to the idea, but at this point we are completely privately funded by people, and there's an organization that wrote a grant to help fund our English program. But we are completely privately funded. No money from the government at this point. And that has worked well. I asked the Seventh-day Adventist man who came, I was talking with him about curriculum. He was so fascinated. He was like, "You're not getting any money from the government?" I said, "No." "None?" I said, "None." He's like, "Wow." I said, "Should we?" He said, "No." He said, "Everything comes with stipulations. This way you can do whatever you want." I said, "It's true." So that's how it works at this point. We have talked about charging. We never have, but we have discussed it. Just want to leave you with this. 1 Corinthians 3:6. "I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. He who plants and he who waters are one, and each will receive his wages according to his labor. For we are God's fellow workers." God bless you.
Thank you, Laverne, for taking us on that journey through the experiences that you've had in Sacramento. Approximately 12 to 15 years ago, I don't know exactly how long it's been, I had a chance to spend a couple of days in Sacramento when my sister Laura was living there. And one evening, Laverne and I walked through the apartment complex they lived in, taking little packets and hanging them on doors. And one of the things I remember him saying repeatedly throughout the course of that evening as we interacted about the work that they do and the opportunities that they have was, I don't know if I'm doing it right. I don't know if we're doing it right, but we're doing something. And that's a challenge that I heard again this morning for myself, and I'll leave with you all as well. It's probably more important that we move with God motivating us than that we do everything just right. And I think since then you have more people looking over your shoulder and helping you, making good choices. But God bless you as you continue in that work. Really enjoyed that overview this morning. A few announcements as we wrap up here. I'll open it up, first of all, for announcements that you may have. Are there any?
Some of you have asked about when we fly to Ireland. We fly out of Cleveland May 13th.
May 13th.
I'll give just a little update on the funeral for Kendra Yoder. So that's a bit limbo yet because the body does not go through customs until tomorrow morning in Atlanta, Georgia. And they're hoping to be able to transport the body tomorrow in hopes to get to Auburn, Kentucky in time for the funeral directors to prepare her for viewing on Tuesday and funeral on Wednesday. But it's a little uncertain yet as to how that will all work out until they actually have the body.
Okay, thank you. It's quite a process. Next Sunday is,
I was just going to mention that most of you should have received your new policies. What's happened to you? If somebody does not have access to a printer or you would like them printed, I am happy to do that for you. Just let me know.
thank you for your work on that. Next Sunday is Easter Sunday, and there's talk underway of plans for a sunrise service. So the plans are not definite. They're somewhat weather dependent. And we'd like to have someone, we're looking for a volunteer to help with food in relation to that. So if you're interested in helping with that, contact Mary Lynn or I. And we'll get more information out about the plan, where and how, and what might be involved with that. This week is the annual Beachy Ministers meetings. They're in northern Indiana this year, and we all plan to travel out that direction. I think Jonas and Wanda's plans are a bit uncertain as they hope to attend the funeral in Kentucky, and so they'll be in a few different states in the next few days, I think. This Wednesday evening would be our Wednesday evening for Bible study here. Communion is planned for April 19th, and there was some mention made last Sunday or maybe Wednesday night at the brothers meeting about a switch there because of some people who already have plans that day. And so the current plan is to have communion on the 19th, but to have the communion service in the evening, that Sunday evening. And then in relation to that council meeting, we're anticipating that being on Wednesday, April 15th. Just a few days before that. So hopefully you'll be able to get your taxes wrapped up and make it here for council meeting that evening. Tonight, there are a couple of different things going on. For school families, there's Bible quizzing happening, and you're aware of what's going on with that. And then there's hospitality night for those that aren't involved with the school quizzing, the Bible quizzing. There should be slips in your mailboxes for the hospitality night tonight. And usually there's a time announced for that, and from my memory, it seems to me at 6:30, but can somebody correct me? Is it 7? Javen, do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think 7 is pretty common, and I also misspoke about the papers in your mailboxes. I think you already know where you're going.
Okay. There's been communication had, and you're saying 7. Okay. I think I always go to 6:30, and it's still 7. So 7 o'clock is the time for you to be at your host if you're involved in hospitality night. Jonas is on for the message next Sunday. Let's pray for him in that. Lots going in his week this week. Anything else that someone else has to mention before we close? All right, God's blessings to the Yoder family as you continue in your route to the ministers' meetings. I think Hicksville tonight, is that correct? Yeah. God bless you with continued resources and guidance in your work there. Let's stand together. Laverne, would you dismiss us with prayer? Laverne Yoder from here, that is. Amen. You're dismissed. May God bless you as you walk with him this week.